You can't go out playing golf having fun.
Fun. Senor, you have obviously never played Wingfoot.
It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
You've got to be kidding me, Vegas. On Monday night. There's my picks for this week. Now, if you want next week's picks, I can give you those by Friday.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wingfoot Locks Week 6 edition. Joe Messeri, very ornery on the microphone for you. We got Greg Hoyle standing under a waterfall as he drives in the car, so that is that hush of wind you hear behind him. He'll be going on mute from time to time, and also maybe we'll mute him just because we don't like his picks. And, of course, Chris Portente, always posing. You can look at his beautiful mug right there. Check it out. So we had another solid week for you last week in Week 5. We knocked it out of the park with the Wingfoot picks, although the Wingfoot lock, Chris Portente, I want you to say why, make your case on why we're going to use the term lock again today, given the fact that the Wingfoot lock has been anything but this season. Go ahead.
We're going to use the lock because that's our brand, the Wingfoot lock. And we went crazy high percentage on the podcast last week. So even if you lost the lock and hit all the other games, we're doing all right.
Yeah, and that's the one that we push out there. We advertise all over the place. So you got to tell your buddies if you're listening to this to make sure that they listen to the whole podcast and don't just try and cherry pick, because that's what happens when you try and cherry pick. All right, with that being said, we like to get right to the games. So we will start with Jacksonville as they host the New Orleans Saints this week. Now, Greg, you like the Jacksonville Jaguars in this one. They come in as the home dogs, giving a point in this one. Why do you like Jacksonville and the mustache in this one?
Yeah, so I like the favorite in this game because I can't tell you why they're the favorite, right? Can anyone logically tell me why New Orleans is getting a point going to Jacksonville? There's no massive home field advantage or anything like that. And you would have, I hope it's not public money that's moving the line to Minshew madness. But I've been looking at it at the beginning of the week. That's not early public money. So I don't think it's going to push it up to 3 or anything. So I have it right now at money line. I'd take it at -1. They're playing decent football, and New Orleans has been playing way above where I would expect them to be. But I'm kind of thinking some of that Teddy Bridgewater performance last week. Everyone throws that way against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Legitimately, I couldn't tell you a game. It was Tampa week 2 was the last time they didn't let up 30, 40 points.
So, Chris, you have no strong feeling in this one? You got to lean or like either way?
Well, I agree with Greg a little bit on that. The line is wrong fishy angle, which we went through in depth last week. Didn't work for us, but we went through in depth. But the other thing is, just remember, one of the reasons I picked the Saints last week and hit one of my main games on the podcast was that October winning record that the Saints have. They were 13-1. They were 12-1 going into last week in October games, and now they're 13-1 in October games. So that's a strong number. I didn't like to go against last week. It's going to be tough to go against this week, but on the road, Bridgewater playing a little over his head, like Greg said, and the line's a little fishy. I'm personally staying away.
So a couple of interesting notes about this game. Yes, Gardner Minshew is apparently was on the injury report earlier this week. I think he's off. He's back on Thursday's edition. Limited participant in practice on Thursday, dealing with a groin issue that he suffered in practice. And then the other thing from this week is Jalen Ramsey is believed to be coming back for the team. He hasn't played in a couple weeks for them, and that could bolster the defense. Look, this feels like a game to me that Jaguars defense is going to get up for. I know last week Greg was knocking Teddy Bridgewater, and then he went out and threw 4 touchdowns, but I think that's going to be the aberration. And I think this week he comes back down to earth. And honestly, the Saints have been playing close games throughout. If they can go into Jacksonville and get this win and go 4-0 with Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, I think we got to pick them as the Super Bowl favorites, at least out of the NFC, when Drew Brees comes back. But This is a big one. Jacksonville playing for their, early playoff lives here. I think you're going to get the best effort from the Jags in this one. It's just a matter of whether or not they can get over the hump against a New Orleans team that has looked really good throughout this season, regardless of who's been under center, if we're being honest there. So I'm passing on this one too, but I'm going to be watching this one closely, and I agree with you, Greg. That line is fishy, and sometimes those fishy lines tend up going in your favor. Yeah, reel it in. Unless it's the Miami Dolphins, then throw it back. All right, with that, we'll move on to the next game here. The Carolina Panthers -2 as they head to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Another division game here for Tampa Bay, who's coming off that loss to New Orleans. So, Greg, you are getting on the Kyle Allen bandwagon in this one, huh?
Yeah, do you have me okay? Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
All right, beautiful. So, let's rewind back to week 2 where Cam Newton was obviously a shell of himself. Like Tampa in that game, they had the opportunity to, go ahead there at the end with Christian McCaffrey, and that was with Cam Newton doing nothing. So, the last 3 weeks, they picked up W's each week. I know it didn't work last week, and it's not something I just want to play blind. I think Carolina's playing better, so that's a big part of this. But Tampa is also on the road, third straight time. They're playing a little bit better, but their defense is still shaky. So I like Carolina to be able to score, and quite frankly, if they had above average quarterback play when they played in week 2, the outcome would have been a little different there. So I just think there's too much of a flip-flop there with the line under 3, 2, 2.5. Great, get it before it goes to 3.
So are you saying that Kyle Allen is an above-average quarterback?
He's been playing at average or above, which would have won in week 2. Cam Newton was playing well below average in week 2, which is why they lost that game. I'm not saying he's a world beater, but he's certainly... between week 17 last year and then the 3 wins so far this year, he's done nothing to show that, he's not playing average or slightly above.
Okay, so let's look at this. The game last week, obviously, they put up 34 points against the Jaguars. That was a heavy lift by Christian McCaffrey in that one. The week before, they beat the Texans 16-10, and then the Cardinals is his other start, where they went to Arizona and won that one 38-20. So, I don't know where to stand on the Jaguars' defense. I still think they're a good defense, and I don't know what happened last week. They wouldn't have. They obviously didn't look like it last week. So, Chris, where are you right now on Kyle Allen and these Carolina Panthers?
I'm staying away from this game. I hate to be boring again on a second pick here. I'm staying away from the game, but what I can tell you is in that game last year and 3 games he played this year, that kid's 4-0 against the spread.
So you're going with the 4-0 again. So he's never going to lose against the spread.
And then I've said I'm staying away from the game, but if you want the nugget or the corn on the cob kernel or whatever it is you need from me right now, he's 4-0 against the spread. So
I hear you.
If you need something, that's what I'm giving you.
Listen, I think this is an interesting game here. I think that Bruce Arians is trying to get through to Jameis Winston. I think that nobody is giving New Orleans' defense credit for what it's been able to do so far this season. And obviously they managed to turn Jameis Winston over a little bit last week. And he's had that up and down season so far. I still don't have any faith in him. But they just look so dominant over Carolina in that Thursday night game that I don't know if I can say this is going to be a complete 180 and go and hop on Carolina's bandwagon in this one. However, I will also add the fact that Carolina and Christian McCaffrey, I'm sure you guys have seen this stat going around. McCaffrey has more total yards this season than the New York Jets. One player, more total yards than the New York Jets. So I'll leave it with that one. I'm going to stay away from this game as well. Don't like a road dog, especially in a division game. So, Greg, you're on that Kyle Allen bandwagon all by yourself. All right, speaking of those hapless New York Jets, they play host to the Dallas Cowboys this week, come in at 7.5-point dogs. The story in this one, the return of Sam Darnold, and the Cowboys obviously coming off that ridiculous stinker against the Green Bay Packers, which may or may not have been the Wingfoot lock of the week last week. So, Greg, you like the Cowboys in this one. You're going back to the well with Dallas here, although I know you were off them last week. So, why do you like the Cowboys in this one?
Yeah, well, let's continue to look in the rear view for a minute. That game wasn't even a game, 31-3 last week, of a team that the Eagles took care of handily at Green Bay. So I think there might be a little bit of an issue with Dallas against some of the better teams. But let's get one thing straight. They just had an embarrassing performance. They're going to want to come out and look good. And the Jets are not a good NFL football team. I'd lump them down with your, maybe not so far as your Washington Redskins and your Miami Dolphins, but a slight step up. And really, why is 5 weeks off going to be a good sign, or 4 weeks off going to be a good thing for Darnold stepping back in and jumping back in? Is he going to make a 15-point difference from Falk? I really don't think so. So I think you have Dallas with something to prove. I know they got the Eagles next week. That's one of those look ahead spots, but I don't think they can afford to look ahead at this point. They need to pick up the win. 7 points is not too many, so I like it. Cover the 7, handle their business. It really doesn't take all that much of an effort to do that against the Jets this year. So we're going Dallas. I don't love doing that, but it looks like the right play.
Chris, your unbiased opinion on this one.
My unbiased opinion is on a few things here. First of all, I don't like that it opened at 9 and went down to 7. That's a big swing right there.
Well, to be clear, to be clear on that line move, because I just want to point out, we didn't know in the beginning of the week that Sam Darnold was going to be playing quarterback. So Luke Falk was the assumed starter, I think, when the line came out in this one, and then Darnold was cleared. I believe it was it yesterday, Wednesday? We're recording here on Thursday.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. I still don't think Donald, like Greg said, 5 weeks off. Didn't even start lifting weights though early this week. Has he worked 2 points? I don't know. I didn't like the line move. Also, I think this is going to be like the Super Bowl for the Jets. I think the fans are going to be raucous there. I think they're going to be real excited to get Donald back. I think the team is going to be happy to see him. I don't think he's going to be in great condition. I don't think he's going to come out of the world. I don't think he'll be, up to the point before he went out sick. But I think they're going to play inspired. I don't like this little bit of a trap game. And I know the Cowboys are got the Eagles last week, and I know Greg said, like he said, they can't afford to look ahead. But also, don't think for a second they're not saying to themselves, all right, not a big deal. We're 3-2. We're going to get right against the Jets, and then we'll go put our heels down against the Eagles. It's just human nature. Do I think the Cowboys can anyway cough up this game? No, but I think it might be a little closer than most people think.
So I'm going to go back to the Christian McCaffrey comment I brought up before. One player has more yards than the Jets so far this season. I think they're in the 700-yard range so far this season. I don't think Sam Darnold is going to be able to turn this around. I even think Coach Adam Gase, who you think the coach is going to be like, all right, we got our guy back, we're ready to go. No, this week he's talking to the media saying that Darnold is no magic pill. Hey, guys, let's go get him this week. That doesn't motivate me if you're talking to me and I'm on your team there. So the fact that he doesn't seem to have right, exactly. So he doesn't seem to have that much confidence in the team for this one. It was really alarming to me when you said that. And then I think the other thing to look at here, the Jets have allowed, I think it's 23 sacks this season. 23 sacks. The Cowboys' defensive line is going to be hungry. I think they're going to have a chip on their shoulder, especially after allowing 4 touchdowns to Aaron Jones last week. I think that they come in here and they destroy the Jets on both sides of the ball because the Jets' defense hasn't been very good either. If there was a week for the Jets to come out and show that they were going to make a stand, I thought it was last week against Philadelphia, and they basically were in it for a little while, but the Eagles ran away with it in the second half. And I think it just comes out that it's demoralizing there. I do think that they won't turn the ball over as much in this one with Darnold in there instead of Falk, but I think that it is going to be a big game for the Cowboys. We'll call it a get-right game. Greg, I'm with you on this one. If this line, I might buy it down to 6.5 from the 7.5 it's at right now, but I'll lay the points with the Cowboys. Especially, this might be something you put in a teaser there. Take the Cowboys -0.5, so they just got to win outright, and I love it. So I'm with you on this one, Greg. I'll roll with the Cowboys for a second straight week. It might be the death of me. All right, with that, let's go to the Los Angeles Chargers. They are -7 as they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh with some serious quarterback issues. I don't know if you saw the video. After Mason Rudolph got knocked unconscious by Earl Thomas against the Ravens last week, there's a video of him saying to the offensive lineman, I'm good. And the offensive lineman just makes a face like, whoo, that guy don't know where he is right now. And honestly, for a little while on the field, things looked pretty bad. So glad to hear that Mason Rudolph was able to walk off the field, I guess, with the assistance of his teammates. But Pittsburgh in a lot of trouble here right now with an undrafted QB getting the start under center. So they head to the West Coast. Greg, you want to lay the 7 with the Chargers in this one. Why? For everything I just laid out?
Yep. So Delvin Hodges, right? So let's go back a couple weeks back when Seattle went to the West Coast and we took them getting the 7, right? Because you had the team, they just lost their starting quarterback, but they traded for Minka Fitzpatrick. So it was the reverse Adam Gase situation, right? We've got faith in our team. We're going to bolster up our lineup. And honestly, if it weren't for those 5 giveaways, I'm not going to call them takeaways because half of the time it was San Fran giving the ball away. That game wouldn't have been close. I felt lucky to have covered that spread. So now we have the third string quarterback, and really just look at how the Jets have fared with the third string quarterback because the Steelers traded away one of their other backups. So now they have this Hodges fellow who I really have no idea who even is. So, if you're saying they're not feeling sorry for themselves, I'm not believing that story. I don't really love Tomlin. And the Chargers coming off a tough loss there. I think they're getting a little bit more used to the injuries that they had. Mike Williams getting a little healthy, Melvin Gordon back, and Austin Eckler, still doing pretty well, right? So you got the skills positions tightened up a little bit. So, I think this is an opportunity. We've been dating, I think, as a group, the Chargers pretty much so all year long. And I'm getting it at 6.5, and I love it at that amount. And to tack that on to what you said, if you want to tease that down with the Cowboys there and just take both teams to win, that's not a bad play either. But I'm going to load up at 6.5.
All right, so let's turn to our resident Chargers fan, Chris Portente. He's been fading the Chargers all season. What do you think about LA in this one?
And I'll continue to fade them, but not this week. There's just too much going against Pittsburgh this week to give them any kind of backing. Everything you said on point, everything Greg said on point, and then all this crazy rumors thrown around about Tomlin possibly taking this gig at Washington, and that can't be helping things to begin with also. And, they're just a complete total mess right now, and they got big problems. As much as I hate to back the Chargers, I think they get it done this week.
I think there's another good thing here is the fact that the Steelers are coming off a game against the Ravens. And, man, I didn't expect it to be as hard-hitting as it was. Even though these two teams are still wearing those the same uniforms, they're very different teams than they've been in years past. But, man, this looked like an old-school Ravens-Steelers game where people were just getting beat up. And I think that the week after you play a game like that, you're still going to be feeling a little sore. You're still going to be – and now you got to go to the West Coast to take on the Chargers. Yeah, I don't think they want to get on a plane. I wouldn't be surprised if this one is over early. And let's not forget, I like getting the Chargers in this spot off a loss too, as they put up a stinker against Denver, who jumped out to an early lead in that one.
Real quick, that's a good point you brought up about the hard-hitting game. And while we're on that real quick, you know what other game last week was really intense and hard-hitting? that Carolina Jacksonville game. So you might want to factor that into those plays as well too. If you like that angle on this game, it might play into those other games too. That was a back and forth, decent scoring game, and if you took a peek in on that game every now and then, that was a real intense, hard hitting game. So that might factor into those two plays as well.
Interesting.
I'm unwavering.
Greg is staying fast with the Jaguars and Panthers in this one. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. I'm with you. I think we're all on the Chargers here, minus the 7. And I think that's a great point, Greg. Let's take it into tease with the Cowboys there, both teams just to win outright this week. Let's jump ahead now to the Los Angeles Rams. They are minus 3.5 as they host the San Francisco 49ers. Rams coming off that Thursday night loss to Seattle, and this was another field goal that goes the other way, and all of a sudden they're winners. And San Francisco coming off a blowout of the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football. Chris, you are rolling with the Rams in this one. Say lay the 3.5. Why do you like LA?
All right, well, the Rams, if I'm not mistaken, opened up at 4. I like them at 4. If you can get them at 3.5 or even 3, even better. A couple of things here. The Niners blew them out last week. Niners played good, but I don't know if you guys saw a lot of the antics after the game on field and talking in cameras and recording the videos. And we're 4-0 and Jimmy G and blah, 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 blah. Hey, don't take anything away from a team that's 4-0. And after the game, by all means, enjoy it. But I didn't like that little cocky attitude there. I think they come down to earth this week. I think their undefeated ride is going to end, and I'll tell you why. Since 2017, the 49ers are 2-10 versus NFC West teams under Shanahan. Okay, those aren't good numbers. And this is their first divisional game this year versus against a NFC West opponent. So they seems to be their nemesis when they play divisional rivals. This is the first time this year they're playing a divisional rival. They're coming off this big blowout game where now they're feeling cocky, and they're going right into a spot where they haven't fared well. And I think it's going to be bye-bye undefeated. And on the complete other side of the ball, McVay and the Rams, they're 10-3 versus division opponents during that same exact time since 2017. So you have the complete two opposite sides of the ball, opposite sides of the coin right now. You got the Rams, who the general public saying they're not playing up to par, not playing up to their talent. I think they do that right this week. There's talk again about Gurley maybe being injured again and not playing this week. But you know what? This has been an ongoing saga with Gurley. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And I just think the Niners are going to come in a little too cocky in this one. They're coming into a spot where they have not fared well, and I think they're going to walk into a buzzsaw.
So,
on top of that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joe. On top of that, the other thing too is in the last 7 games, the Rams are 6-1 against the spread.
Last 7 games, the Rams are 6-1 against the spread.
Last 7 divisional games. 6-1 against the spread.
Yeah, and that includes Thursday night with the half-point cover over the Seahawks, despite their loss up in Seattle. There, Greg, what's your take in this one on the Rams?
Long rest versus short rest, like that. And just like last week, I don't like golf on the road, but I like them at home. So I don't have any, I'm staying away, but I don't disagree with anything going on.
So, Chris, I was liking the Rams before we talked about it here in the podcast, but man, it's just the more I think about this, the more I love it. I don't know if you guys watched the Monday Night Football game against the Browns, but the Browns were actually driving there. They would have made it, I believe, 14-10 before the half, and Antonio Callaway has a short touchdown in his hands, drops it, kicks off his foot. The 49ers intercept it, return it to the Browns 40, end up scoring, I think, a touchdown before the half. And that game was over. It's 24-3 instead of 17-14, I believe the situation was. And then the Browns kind of just quit after that. I think you're right. San Francisco, I didn't realize they hadn't played an NFC West game yet this season. But when you look at it even closer, they really haven't played much competition. Sure, if you want to say that Cleveland is a good team, they're coming off that blowout win against the Ravens when they play them on Monday Night Football. But let's not forget, the 49ers were coming off a bye week there and had some extra time to prepare, and you're getting the Browns coming off a division game that was a huge game for them that they needed to win over the Ravens, caught them in a good spot there. I think you're getting the Rams here in a bad spot. Greg mentioned it, short rest for the 49ers, long rest for the Rams, who have 10 days to recover after that game in Seattle on Thursday night. And I loved what Jared Goff said after that game when he was asked, you guys are 3-2 to start the season. You had high expectations. How you feeling? His response was, I think the Patriots started the season 3-2 last year, and things worked out pretty well for them. So they are still feeling confident over there. I kind of think the 49ers are a little bit of a paper tiger. So this seems like a great spot for the Rams to jump on them there. And Chris, I am jumping on it. I wasn't going to touch this one, but at 3.5, I like the Rams at home. And Greg, you mentioned the Goff numbers. This one just seems like a no-brainer to me. It's the Rams in this one.
I think the Niners are walking into a buzzsaw this week.
Greg, you want to add to that before we move on?
Yeah, Joe, I was just going to mention it has nothing to do with this game, but I think you actually just explained why the Browns are only a short dog against Seattle because of exactly that. If, whatever Callaway or whatever the guy's name coming back from the suspension doesn't kick the ball to the defender's hands and they return that, they go in and make that a 4-point game. Instead, it goes up 21-3, and it just turns out ridiculous. So something that I was wondering is why that other line was so short. That's kind of the analysis that really explains that. So I understand that a little better now.
So let's go into that game. And we had it. We were going to talk about it. We weren't going to talk about it, but I think I just talked myself into that game too. Seattle Seahawks -1.5 this week at the Cleveland Browns. That's the game that Greg is talking about here. We were all didn't like the line. It's Seattle -1.5 when you just saw Cleveland on Monday Night Football look terrible in front of the whole world. How the heck are they only a 1.5 dog against the Seattle Seahawks, who just beat the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday Night Football in front of the whole world? So, I think that we need to look at this game a little bit, because when we talk about our principles, man, this is a great spot right now to take the Cleveland Browns. Just what I said about Cleveland going to San Francisco last week when they had to play the Ravens the week before. That was their game. They needed to win. They needed to get up for it. It's a division game. The next week they go on the road and lay a stinker. Seattle's in the same situation. Last week they had to play the LA Rams, their division rivals. Now they have to go on the road. And we're talking about a West Coast team going east for a 1 o'clock start. We always love to fade that position to begin with. And I'm getting a 1.5 here in this one with the Browns, who I don't think were in as bad shape as everybody thought they were last week. So this is one that the public, I think, is going to be all over Seattle. I think this line is going to go in the Browns' favor, so you can probably wait to take them on there. And the fact that it opened up, this is a reel it in. This is a fishy line here, Chris. This is one I want to reel in. You guys want to talk me off of the Browns? Because I think I just talked myself into it.
Yeah, I'll try and talk you off the Browns.
Okay, give me numbers.
You think that the public is going to be
on Seattle?
On Seattle.
Yes.
I don't think that way. I think the public is waiting for this quote unquote real good Cleveland team to break out. And I think they got their chops wet a little bit when they beat the Ravens. But, I think the Ravens are like the Cowboys. I think the Ravens are going to go out and beat these bad teams. And then when they play good teams, or decent teams that have something to lean on, like the Browns can lean on defense, I think they're going to have trouble. I don't think the Browns are that good. I think the Browns have too much going on there. And I said this in the preview podcast we did with the totals. I just don't. I think they're going to be like an 8-8 team, maybe a 9-17 if they catch a break somewhere. But I don't think they're ever going to go on this roll and be this dominant team. They have the talent, they have the stars, but I don't think it's going to take effect this week. And I think Russell Wilson and the Seahawks are going to go in there and beat them. So I do. I really do.
So let me say, I don't think that the Browns are that good of a team either. However, I think that this is going to be one of the best situations you're going to find them, and I don't think Seattle's that good of a team. I think Seattle's win over at home on a Thursday night game. We know about the advantage that home teams have on Thursday night games, but they should have lost that game. They had the Rams, let's not forget, had a kick to win it from Greg Zuerlein that was kind of a chip shot, especially when you're talking about Zuerlein, and he missed it. So what is this line if all of a sudden Seattle loses that game? That's number one. Number two, we always talk about that West Coast team going east. I think they have the Ravens next week. I think Seattle has the Ravens. Let me check just to make sure that this isn't a sandwich game here for the Browns. But I think this is just the best spot that you're going to get these Browns in. And then the other thing is, we got to check on this, is the injuries in their secondary. Let's not forget, for the last 2 games, they've been competitive pretty much without their entire secondary. And
they got a decent defense. That's what they're going to lean on. That's what I mean. Teams that have something to lean on, they can lean on that. They got a decent defense, the Browns.
Right, and they've been doing it with their entire secondary banged up. The last 2 weeks, I don't think they had one starter playing in their secondary. So if all of a sudden they start to get a little bit healthy, then this looks a little bit better. And they just played the Rams. When we look at a common opponent, let's not forget they were driving late with a chance to tie that game. I think it was 20-13 for Cleveland. They had a chance for the Rams, Cleveland had a chance to tie that game late in the red zone. Obviously, they didn't score, but if they do, all of a sudden, that's a different game. I think this is an interesting spot. Greg, what do you think on this one?
Hey, Joe, you said all of a sudden they get healthy. That's the question. Are they getting healthy? Are they getting anyone back? Is anyone coming back? That would be my question.
Yeah, so
I think the long rest, short rest, like we have going in this game as well, kind of negates the west to east type of situation.
I agree with that.
And I don't think that's as, I was just on the Cardinals last week, west to east, in that situation. So I don't think it's an automatic, don't play or do play situation. And I do think it's kind of a short rest.
Yeah. And as far as those injuries are concerned, the rest does change things perhaps a little bit there. Denzel Ward.
I'm sorry. I just want to simplify this one bit. You give me Russell Wilson versus Baker Mayfield right now, this time of year, right where they both are now. I'm taking Russell Wilson 10 out of 10 times.
Well, I mean, I'm not
going to throw in head coaches as well. Agreed.
Totally agree. Great point, Greg.
I'm not going to disagree with either of you guys there. Just to answer the question before, Denzel Ward and Greedy Williams, 2 cornerbacks, both questionable to return this week with hamstring injuries. All right. I'm going to slow my roll on this. I need to look at it again. I do remember Russell Wilson running for his life against the Rams too, so I gotta think that he makes plays happen. You're right when it comes to quarterbacks there. Definitely worth a closer look. Don't jump on Seattle either way. Take a second look at that game before.
I agree. If you're looking for a spot where you can take the Browns where you think they might be able to do it, it's probably this week. But I think the public is banking on that, and I don't think that's happening soon. I just don't think they're there yet.
I will say this: I expect Seattle to be a very big survivor pool pick this week, and I expect a lot of survivor pool fans to be sweating it out late in that one. I think that's going to be very interesting. Wouldn't be surprised if some people go down with the Seahawks this week in the survivor pool. All right, let's move on to the next game. We talked about that one for far too long. The Minnesota Vikings -3. Coming off that big win against the Giants, they host the Philadelphia Eagles, who are coming off their big win against the Jets last week. Vikings -3 in this one. Chris, you like the Vikings in this one, and you want to put a hashtag, I believe, on it.
Yeah, I think I love the Vikings in this one. When this game came out, I loved the line when it came out at 3. This is pretty much the reasons why. Since 2017, the Vikings are 14-4 straight up, and 13-5 against the spread at home. That's a tough place to play. That's a loud place to play. The Eagles have been playing some good football, but it's always tough when you go into that stadium. The Eagles have won and they have covered 4 straight road games. Okay. But now they're back this week. They're coming back into Minnesota, and I just think they're up against it this week. I think it's time for that. I don't think they're going to go 5-0 on the road. I think that's a real tough thing to do. And the other thing is, this is something that I dug up that was pretty glaring to me that I didn't know. Greg is our resident Eagle fan, so I'm curious to see if he knew this. Let me know if you had an inkling about this, Greg. But in the past 11 games, the Philadelphia Eagles are 2-9 against the spread in games that start at 1 p.m. That's a glaring fact to me. Greg, you there?
I'm here. I was trying to just not listen to such stats, but you're on the right side, and I totally support the play. I think it's a good play. I have the Sale Birds, and if they do pull off the upset win, Carson Wentz for MVP.
I think we got a long way to go yet on that.
I think for all the bad mouthing Cousins got, and for me myself included, I think he righted the ship a bit last week. I think Joe hit it on the head last week when he said he was going to take care of his receiver there. After that,
yeah, Adam Thielen with 7 catches.
Joe was banking on. I don't know if he had the 10 catches, but he was pretty close, right?
Seven catches for Adam Thielen. I think 140 yards and 2 touchdowns, maybe.
And I think confidence goes a long, long way in this league, especially for quarterbacks. There's nothing worse for a quarterback than to be in your own head and to listen to all the chirping. I think a win always makes everybody feel good. A win makes everybody get right. I think Cousins got back on the ship a little bit, and I think he goes home this week. Big crowd. I don't see the Eagles going 5-0. I see them going getting a little better than they did last week. And with all those stats I just gave you, I think Minnesota is a big, big, big time play, and I love them laying 3.
All right. One of the things I need to know, Greg, because you're in Philly, what's the status on the health of the Eagles? Because we know they've been dealing with injuries, especially on the defensive end and some on the offensive end this year. What's the feeling you're getting in Philly?
Yeah, so nobody major, and this is where I think that I brought up look ahead earlier on the Cowboys, because Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Mills, they're both talking about next week already. Ooh. So these are people talking about a Week 7 return. So I think they're going to do what they can. They're getting Sidney Jones back, but it's debatable whether or not that's that big of an increase. I mean, he's been okay. But that's an addition. Skandrick didn't play poorly. I think he had an illness of sorts. So he sat out of a recent practice. So they're getting a little bit better, but again, it looks like a lot of them are targeted to return next week, not this week.
All right. So definitely.
And also are they looking ahead to next week? Big divisional game against the Cowboys next week.
That's literally, thanks for listening to the podcast, Chris. That's literally what Greg just said. How they're talking about next week against the Cowboys when they haven't played this week against the Vikings yet. Oh my God! One of these days.
I thought he was talking about the guys coming back from injury.
No, he's in a waterfall. It's all right. It's hard. It's tough to hear him.
Feisty this week, Joe.
I know. This is salty Joe this week. I like this one too. I pumped the brakes a little bit on Minnesota because watching that game, the Giants had a bunch of opportunities in the red zone that they weren't able to capitalize on. And I know some of that is Minnesota's defense stepping up to the plate. I also know that some of that is the ineptitude and lack of a running game for the Giants, who were down to their third-string running back last week. Jordan Howard has been an absolute beast in the red zone for Philadelphia. I loved him when he was with Chicago. Couldn't believe that the Bears got rid of him, but they like Montgomery, I guess, they're in their backfield now. And
also, week, Joe. Also
yes,
a road game.
That's
difference playing Minnesota.
And that's the big thing that I was going to say is Minnesota has played really well at home. And I don't trust the Eagles yet. Look, that one game against Green Bay kind of feels like the outlier to me for the Eagles so far this year. They lost to Atlanta. They had again, that was a game where they were really banged up. That win against the Jets really didn't impress me because it was a little bit closer than that final score I think led on there with the Jets kind of turning it over. So I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth in this one. If I'm playing it, I'm playing the Vikings because I think that the Eagles have not been as good as public perception is on them right now, where I think the Vikings, the public perception is still a little bit down on them. So I think I would roll with the Vikings in this one. Otherwise, I'm going to pass on it. But Chris is putting on the hashtag. Come on, there it is. Hashtag. He says, lock it up, the Wingfoot lock of the week on the Minnesota Vikings.
Wingfoot lock.
All right, we got one more game before we leave you this week. The Cincinnati Bengals are plus 11 as they head to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. The Ravens, that sounded weird. Sorry about that. A division game here. Baltimore hasn't looked good as of late, and Cincinnati hasn't looked good, well, all season. So why do you like the 11 points in this one, Christopher?
Okay, well, we know it's not because the Red Rifle, as we call him, the pink water gun. That's not the reason why I like him. But here's the reason why I like them. So the Bengals are 3-3 against the spread in the last 6 divisional games. Okay, it's 50% against the spread. Not so great, not so bad. But the key stat: 7-3 straight up, and 7-3 against the spread in the last 10 games versus the Ravens. Also, the Ravens 3-12 against the spread in the last 15 games when they're favored by 10 or more. And this line opened up at 11. I've seen it in some places at 11.5. Also, the Ravens are 0-6. 0-6 against the spread in the past 6 home games versus divisional opponents. Those are big numbers. And what have I been telling you? When the numbers are so-so, then they're so-so. When the numbers sway heavy in one direction, they're hard to ignore. And we have not ignored them all year. And all these games that I've been giving you where these numbers were really swayed in one direction, they've been money makers. So I like the Bengals getting the points this week against the Ravens.
So with numbers like that, I'm actually surprised that's not the lock of the week this week, Chris. Those are huge.
Well, it's hard to make the pink water gun the lock of the week. It's just really, really hard. I'd much rather go with the team playing in front of the raucous crowd in Minnesota.
Yeah, especially when they're on the road in a division game and coming off a loss to the Arizona Cardinals, one which we were on the right side of, by the way. Greg, I want to know what you think on this one before I weigh in, and then we'll call it a day.
So not sure why I didn't catch it last week, but you just reminded me of a throwback, I think like 5-6 years ago. Colin Cowherd coined him the beige water pistol. So I think we've got a little variation of that. Tough to pick them, but I think good data there. They showed last week that I have no idea how they even fought back to score those last 2 touchdowns, but they didn't quit, so that's a good thing. So when you're looking for a backdoor, you want a team that can open the back door and get in there.
I love it. So I got on you last week. I think it was last week about emotions, and then this week they didn't quit, so that was a good thing. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, when you're rooting for a team that's getting 11, you need a back end cover to be in there. You can't just have them lay down.
Absolutely. And I think that the Ravens last week, they're coming off that game against Pittsburgh, and I'm going to go back to what I said about Pittsburgh this week. It is a tough game, man. They were beating each other up. I think that could play this week. They're a little sore. Yeah, they come away with a win, but maybe not by more than 11 against the division rival. I really like this one. And those numbers, Chris, those are some serious numbers there. Anytime you put up the O, and it's working in your favor, that's hard to go against there.
I'll just sway away from. Yes.
Yeah, he's doing the deep dives on that one.
This is why we do this. This is why we do this research. This is why we do this podcast.
Kids,
granted, the Wingfoot lock has let us down, but these games that we have broken down, all 3 of us on the podcast, we've given you some money makers. We've given you a ton of money makers.
This is a message to the kids out there. That's why you do your homework, children, if you're listening and gambling.
It's also why you also got to follow Wingfoot Lock as well as hashtag according to Hoyle, because that's not letting you down either.
Yes, big week, another big week in college football for according to Hoyle there. Again, picking above 60. Are we up to 65% yet on the season, Greg?
It's like 63.9.
Oh,
So
go
right.
get him, Greg. Go get him, Greg.
All right, so one more time to review for you guys listening out there. This week, Greg likes Jacksonville -1 as they play host to the Saints. Carolina -2 as they head on the road to take on Tampa. He's laying a touchdown and a half point with the Cowboys as they take on the Jets at MetLife. And then he is laying 7 with the Chargers as they host the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chris likes the Rams 3.5-point favorites against San Francisco. He likes the Bengals plus 11 points at Baltimore, and his hashtag Wingfoot lock of the week is the Minnesota Vikings -3 as they play host to the Philadelphia Eagles. Those are your picks for this week. We wish you a happy Sunday and enjoy football. For Chris Portente, Greg Hoyle, and Joe Messeri, that's me. Remember, everybody, it's not whether you win or lose, it's whether or not you cover the spread. Talk to you next week.